There we are.
What if the 2023 tech unwinding isn't over? It used to be getting into a fang. Companies like Meta, Amazon, Netflix was like winning the golden ticket. In tech, we trusted, and for years the money flowed like it could not end. Then last year, the layoffs came. But will they be stopping anytime soon? In Davos this week at the World Economic Forum, the one where the big thinkers, movers, shakers converge each year to tell or to declare where the world is heading, the consensus was that the economy is slowing. The World Bank, in fact, estimates the 2024 global growth will drop to 2.4% from 2023's 2.6%. Now, profit is the payoff that keeps people playing. There's a general rule in business that when your top line stops growing, start cutting costs to find your profit. That turn from gazing outward to inward usually means one thing: operational efficiencies. And when everything is on the chopping block, good luck with job security. Case in point, just this week, YouTube laid off 100 employees, and Alphabet's not done yet. So if you're trying to figure out how to do more with less, how to rein in those costs and still build full-featured products or tools, this might be the time to add MeteorJS to your toolkit. Stick around if you want to hear what's been going on with MeteorJS, and if you stay until the end, we'll give you 5 reasons you could share with your team why it just might be the thing to help you prosper in the downturn. No, my friends, you're not in the Twilight Zone. You're watching or listening to the 22nd episode of This Week in MeteorJS, a weekly news segment of the MeteorJS Dispatches podcast, a resource for both new and veteran users, hosted by MeteorJS community ambassadors, where they share information, events, activities, and other newsworthy items. I'm Alim Gafar, your host, live streaming to you from New York City.
Hello, I'm Jan Dvorak, aka Storyteller, coming to you from Prague.
Hey, I'm Jan Küster from Germany. Hello.
And Philippe from Brazil.
So with that, let's get right on to the news.
Yeah, and I'm starting the news today with a very deadly topic. So the big question that already big literary famous persons already asked, that or not that, and I tried to get a little bit deeper below the general surface of this debate of being that or not being that. And here is the thing. I came to this point when I read a few weeks ago, again, some comment on Reddit that Meteor is dead. And I wanted to not go into this basic defense mechanism like, oh yeah, and here are the facts, and this is the fact, and this is the fact. But I wanted to go a little bit deeper into this whole topic and see how is that thing really considered when we also look at other frameworks or libraries that are already considered that, but everybody has them installed. So this is a little bit different from the typical debate on Meteor being alive, but at the end there will be something for you valuable as well. And what I like to do to you is read the article and join the discussion. Or what do you think about this topic? I've linked a very valuable article on this whole that debate that you should also read. And in the end, I hope you all will understand a little bit better that this whole terminology has to change a little bit. That's at least my perspective on that. And if you haven't read it, please check it out.
And just to add something to this point, like I think when Tiny acquired Meteor, I was invited to go to the Syntax FM podcast to talk about the second life of Meteor. And I think we are approaching to the third life of Meteor. It's going to be Meteor 3. And the numbers are, I think, are just a coincidence, but I think it's really going to be the third life of Meteor. And I think we're going to talk more about this. And just to put a number here that I think I remember correctly, last time I checked when I was still the Meteor CEO, like the Meteor process was running at least 200,000 times every day somewhere. So like people were using Meteor 200,000 times every day somewhere in the world. So it's like there are a lot of Meteor processes running somewhere in the world. We didn't track like the location or anything like that. So it's hard to tell what these people are doing. But for sure there are many people using Meteor nowadays still.
And I like the idea, as you said, Meteor is coming to the third life now. So you entered the second life, and now it's the third life. Software can be reanimated at any time, and I'm putting that in the article. This is a very important fact. Software can't die and then is dead forever. So software can be reanimated, and this is really important to think about. Alim, you had a little critique on my article. I know that, and I think that's totally okay if you have anything to say critically on the article. So maybe next time I can do it better.
Yeah. So one of the things I think that you did very well here was bring up the point that software is not like people, but you can kind of classify this notion of death in different ways. And you started there and it didn't quite go. My thought actually is to write a companion piece to this to elaborate on that, because you and I talked about this before you wrote this article and we were very excited, right? But I also know that these are very big concepts, and trying to get both in, which is building a framework as to how do we think about software in terms of its life cycle and in terms of its usage, is not a trivial thing to do. And then the other part was to apply that to Meteor, to apply that analytic framework to Meteor. So I think I'm going to give a stab at this to kind of expand a little bit on where you started. I don't think that there's a failing there per se. I think there was a lot that you were trying to get in, and you just didn't get a chance to let it breathe, so to speak. So, yeah, it might seem like critique, but it's at the end of the day, it's not so much. It's a critique, but it's not a criticism, right? It's really that I think that there were some opportunities that were missed, but at the same time, because of the scope of the article that you were writing and the point that you wanted to get to, it just you just didn't get it there. And I'm not sure whether or not it would have been successful if it had been written as fully as I think I would have liked to have seen it develop. So that's my point there. And take it for what it is. So.
Oh no, I think that's really great. I mean, in the end, this is part of this whole culture we try to establish here, right? It's all about feedback. It's all about we giving us feedback to each other. The community gives input, gives feedback. We give input, we give feedback, and everybody makes the best out of it, right? So thank you for that, definitely. So I will take it into consideration. And as some people already know, I'm constantly writing articles on various topics about Meteor, but also about JavaScript and software in general. And I will definitely consider it for next time. Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to, that came to mind recently is my wife kind of reminded me a little bit about this, is that a lot of software today and software development really sort of follows like fashion, trends in a sense, right? Just like in fashion, the hot thing for the season is, I don't know fashion, but you know what I mean? Like it's going to be this bathing suit, or it's going to be this outfit, or it's going to be these shoes, and everybody gets really excited about it. And then 6 months later, they're moving on to something, or maybe it's 3 months. It seems to me that in software, we've gotten to a point now where different frameworks, different platforms, different, paradigms pop up. They become the hot thing for the moment. And then once people get over it and move on, it's abandoned. And in some ways, we were the hot thing in between 2014 and 2016, right? This was like Meteor as a platform was a very, very hot thing. And then people decided that they were going to move on to other things. And it doesn't mean that the fashion that you came to before, like the shoes, are worse off now because they're not like getting the attention that they had before. It's just that the attention has shifted. But the shoes that you bought might still be really good. They might be well designed, they fit well, they wear well. And again, I think that's the case also with fashion. It's kind of funny that I got into tech because I didn't really understand fashion, and now fashion has come and hit tech in the same sense of the way things move. I don't know what your observation is, but
I can tell you one observation, and that is that there is definitely, I would say, it's not a coincidence that the recent amounts of money getting pushed into a certain tech definitely reflects also on the popularity of the next upcoming frameworks, tools, libraries, whatever. And so just to closing the circle to our initial topic here, right?
Yeah.
I think there's definitely an influence on this whole investment concept and how investments in this whole tech area are done and how this affects open source and developer community overall. Definitely.
Right.
That's my observation, at least.
No, that's a good one, because I think you're absolutely right. We do chase the money, right? And attention, or I should say, attention chases the money. And when you have these VC firms that are saying, well, this is the next hot thing, people tend to jump on it because that's where the money is, and it's just a fact of life. I think that I don't think is ever going to change, but I think that also drives the fashion trend, and I think in a lot of ways it's these VCs that are or these investors that are also pushing what they think is fashionable for the next season. So
yeah, I think case in point in that is the move from crypto to AI. And I want to add here one thing that kind of came out of your accent, Jan. Which instead of that, it sounds like that to me. So I would say Meteor is not that. Meteor is that. And
it's dad software, like dad jokes.
Yeah.
Well, that's one thing of it, but also I would say that Meteor has fathered a lot of other very successful products around. So that I think plays a part in that as well.
Yeah,
I just want to say to tech leaders, like leading companies, that like maybe if like Meteor doesn't have enough resource or not the same amount as resource as like, for example, Vercel with Next.js, maybe that's not a bad news. So if you think about your company, maybe you want to be in the hands of a technology where the company behind it doesn't want to make a lot of money really fast, because maybe they need to take some shortcuts that are going to kill your company, because they are going to release a lot of breaking chains and they're going to do a lot of crazy stuff because they need to return the money as fast as possible. And then Meteor is not in these hands, and that's public information. You can see how Tiny operates, and Tiny tries to get profit from the companies. And to get profit, you need to have happy clients. And to have clients, in case of Tiny right now, you need to have happy clients running on Galaxy. And Galaxy depends on Meteor. So like that's for me, it's a positive cycle. Like you need to have a good product, to have good hosting, and then you have money. But in other case, when it's just VC, they just need to grow very fast. And that was the problem for Meteor. Like when Tiny acquired Meteor, it was because Meteor was kind of stagnated, because Apollo team need to research a new way to make more money because of the VCs. So like when you see a lot of money going to a framework, for maybe most of people, oh, that's great. In my case, that I was in the other side, like watching these movements, I say, oh, be careful, because maybe now they need to chase the money and not happiness or like developer experience. So I'm always like kind of afraid of this mindset of like, oh, it's good because now we have a lot of dollars to spend, because maybe they are not going to spend in something that's useful for you as a developer, especially if you are a small company. So pay attention to the incentives behind the scenes.
And talking about chasing numbers, one of the numbers that we often see people looking at are benchmarks in terms of performance. And if you've been a regular member of this community and a regular viewer of this program, you know that we've brought up from time to time alternative runtimes like Bun and Dino. We keep our eye on promising adjacent tech, and we have focused on the performance gains that have come out of it and the perceived gains. And if you remember about 3 or 4 episodes ago, we featured a couple of articles on this topic by a university professor from the University of Montreal who had done some testing, benchmark testing on Bun and Node and tried to see what the performance gains were. Well, this topic is again addressed by Lars Kapper in his blog post called The State of Benchmarking in Node.js. And he gets his hands dirty and shows the difference between what he calls micro and macro benchmarking. And it's a really thoughtful article that puts in context what we need to think about when we're talking about benchmarking software. So I would say you should give it a read, go try some of the code yourself, and see if what he says makes sense to you. Felipe, I think you also found another article that is also talking about this specific topic with this specific technology.
Yeah, there is a guy from Node.js core team. I think yes, this one. This guy is from Brazil, but I don't know this guy. I have never talked to him. But he is writing like how you should evaluate benchmarks. And I think that's because like a lot of articles from Bun or from these other tools, they're not actually an article. They're just a tweet with 2-3 numbers. So he's trying to explain how you could conduct this kind of benchmarks. And if Ian scrolls down, you can see that they have even some statistics methods that you should use to be sure that it's relevant to what you are discovering. So I really recommend this article so you can take with a grain of salt all these other benchmarks that you see online when you don't have all these details that this guy is providing there. So it's tough to do benchmarking the correct way, but it's important to understand that many of these benchmarks that you see, they are just one number. They are not really a benchmark that you can rely on for your application.
This is why in science there is peer reviews for articles, so the benchmarks people throw around or the statistics people throw around get at least validated by others, right?
I think the really important thing here is not to just take a benchmark at its face value, right? You should do a little more digging. You should try to understand the context in which this benchmark is generated, understand what the limitations behind these benchmarks are. A good interesting one is, I don't know if you guys have seen recently, there's been a lot of talk about this this demonstration that was done with the Cybertruck recently with Porsche 911, where it raced against the Porsche 911 while towing a Porsche 911, and it was a high-end Cybertruck. Somebody did some research. They said it didn't go like the full quarter mile that it claimed that it was going to go. It only went 1/8 of a mile. And by the way, it was using like the lowest performing 911s against the highest performing Cybertruck. So it's not exactly an apples to apples comparison. And also none of this was really, discussed or shared at the outset. So context will shape the meaning of a benchmark. And for any of us that are evaluating different technologies to figure out whether or not those are things that we should be adopting, we really need to be careful about what we look at when we get these benchmarks. We need to dig a little deeper and try to understand what's behind them, what's the context to it. So that is the idea behind this. Anybody else want to throw in on this one?
Well, I think also with your analogy or with the Cybertruck and versus high performing car, that's also like completely 2 different categories as well. So the entire thing in its way is completely silly. So that's also like another thing to consider as well. Are you comparing here products or like stuff that they're actually meant to, meant to do? So it would be like silly to compare, something that specializes in, quick return on, say on HTTP methods versus something that's specified that is like Meteor, which is all about real time instead of, being an API server.
And the other thing too, especially when we're talking about things that process data, right, is we also have to know where in our pipelines we're running into bottlenecks. CPU performance may be great, and you might be able to get a lot more out of it. But if that's not where you're running into your, if that's not your gating factor, for instance, maybe your gating factor is on your database lookups, and it has absolutely nothing to do with the performance of your node runtime. You're not gonna gain anything from having a faster runtime. And again, runtime without context, whether it's the runtime running some synthetic benchmarks versus, one that is actually using different libraries that you would use in an application, and then seeing how it performs with that library versus a different runtime is probably a better way of testing. So, I'd say, lead with the data that you're given, and then do your own tests in your own lab to figure out whether or not it matters to you and whether or not it makes a difference. But again, the point is just and I think as Storyteller's pointing out, make sure that it's an apples to apples comparison. It's meaningful. So when something looks hot, it could be really sexy to look at. You might think to yourself, we got to throw out what we got. We got to put something new in, but do your homework. All right. Okay. I think we need to change on to things that are a little more specific to Meteor. And got something here?
Yes, I have. Speaking of, being dead, not dead, and performance, and especially all to talk with Meteor 3, we actually have a Illustrates sharing with us that they have migrated their SaaS to Meteor 3.0 beta.
Wow.
So that's, I would say, very encouraging. They give here kind of their strategy, how they've done it, some little bit about what they are using, all that stuff. Some of their challenges, as expected. Their biggest challenges, you could say, were the packages. Some of these have been also since updated and should no longer pose a challenge. So, but also disclaimer here, they weren't using as many, I could say, community packages as was pointed out. I think maybe Zodern or maybe Harry pointed out. So, they had a lot of their own code and very specific. At Illustrates, if we look them up, hopefully I have the correct address. Nope. So let me try again. Just give me a moment. I definitely have seen it. So they are okay. So I don't have that on top of my head here. Oh, sorry, it's right here.
That's okay.
So they are like SaaS in regards to maps. So a lot of data and a lot of other sources, also including I think there's Postgre as well. So just
they do a lot of data visualization with maps, right, and large data sets. And so what they're doing is this is not small projects, right? This is actually a pretty big deal what they do. So it's the work that they do is very significant, and they've got some pretty big customers. And I think so. We're not talking about somebody's afternoon project that they did. This is an actual business that provides a service, a meaningful service to other companies, and you're saying that they were able to do a successful migration, or they're
at least that is what they claim.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if the presentation site is
No, I think they say they are still testing it, but it's going well so far. I think they state that in the first sentence.
Yes.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. All right. So that's encouraging, and it should encourage those of you that are sitting on the fence to
But here, just going to give you, it's in the first paragraph they describe the scale. So they have 100 packages built in-house, over 9,500 files, and they have async await like 671 function. Awaiting functions they had to create were over 2,000. So it wasn't like even like just a small, migration.
Yeah.
So definitely something to look at and get inspired by.
And by the way, just to leave a hook here for probably the next session here of this week in Meteor.js, I'm going to talk about the S-Lint plugin that we are building. And then these numbers that they put in the top, you are going to have these numbers very easily just running the S-Lint plugin. We are already running for some clients, and we are running in our own projects. And it's already published, but it's not documented. So I believe for the next week, we can teach you how you can get these numbers. So okay, I have 1,000 as these guys, or I have like 500. I don't know. So we already saw some projects with more than 2,000, for example. So I think it's going to be between 500 and 2,000 in most cases. But you can find out with the S-Lint plugin.
So the S-Lint plugin will actually inventory your code and let you know where you need to make these changes.
Yes, and analyzing your whole tree so you don't have false positives, because there are some codes thrown in the forum, but they just get any function call and they assume they need to be migrated. The S-Lint plugin, the way that we implemented, it's analyzing the tree to see if it's going to the client, it's going to the server, and then you can have the proper place only when you need to migrate, because otherwise people are getting crazy because they are seeing a lot of false positives, so the number increased quite a lot. So that's why it was a challenge to create this S-Lint plugin. And we use a part of this code from Zodern, then we implement another part, and then that's what I can explain next time.
Yeah, let's do that in another episode. But it sounds like this is very promising for people that are planning to do migrations. It'll help them in the discovery phase. Okay. And
I still have more to do in regards to good news. And we are going to, if you remember before the stream, but there is something called Chain Stream to Redis, which is built on top of Redis uplog, which utilizes the MongoDB chain stream instead of uplog to get stuff into your Redis database that you're using with Redis uplog. And we just recently had another confirmation here, or from user called mcloud250, saying that the benchmarks were pretty efficient, and also Radek giving us some new benchmarks, or kind of showcasing how you can probably see when the package was applied. So it really helps. So if you are using Redis to uplog, Redis. Redis uplog. Definitely consider chain stream to Redis to get use of this new technology. That, by the way, is also being evaluated for Meteor itself to move from uplog to chain streams. But there are still, at least last time this was evaluated, there were still some limitation, and with that there were also we were starting at Meteor 3, so there wasn't time to do that. But after Meteor 3 is done, this will be something that the core team is going to be looking at. So question to the chat, are you using Redis uplog, and have you checked out chain stream to Redis? And while you are at it answering, please consider giving us a like, or definitely give us a like, so that you know that you've watched this episode and you help us out.
And actually, I really like this approach that Radek took in this project, because the change strings is running in another process. So I know it's more moving pieces for people that are getting started with the framework, but for companies that are really large workloads in production, it's much better when you can split the pieces. So you can say, okay, now my change strings are getting heavy, but that doesn't affect my application. And in the same time, you still use Redis to communicate with your application back the change. So even if you have 3 moving pieces, and with MongoDB 4, for large applications, it's better because you can fine tune where you need more resources. So I really like this approach that Radek took there. And maybe don't even need to have this incorporating the Meteor core, if you can provide an easy way for people to run all these pieces together. So that would be, in my opinion, a better approach, especially for production. Of course, for developing, it would be better to have something that runs automatically for you.
I just want to do a real quick shout out to the folks that are in the chat right now. I see Jan is back again. Hey, Jan. Raphael is here, and our old companion ambassador, Dimitri, in Crete, is over here also. So how are you doing? By the way, should mention that of the four of us that are up here, three of the members here, Felipe and the Jan brothers, are founding ambassadors, community ambassadors, and so it's really kind of cool that we're getting some of our members over here. We'll have to talk about the ambassadors and the Ambassadors 2.0 program in an upcoming episode. But for those of you who have some knowledge, the ambassadors are the folks within the community that help with outreach to new members and also provide assistance and can be called upon to help out with folks that are already in the community. And they're basically recognized for the work that they do already. Not so much that they got the title and then they were doing the work, they were doing this and then they were recognized. So thank you all for the service that you provide and continue to provide. And for those ambassadors out there that we have not seen in a while, and we'll bring your names up at some point, folks like Mehdi and Fabian, and as I mentioned before, we have Dimitri here also. It's good to see you guys again, and hopefully we can get you all on the program at some point. I see Pedro Neto is also in the chat, and with that, we're going to move back, and I think Küster has something to tell us. Küster, your microphone is off.
Yep.
Sorry for that. As you might already know, migrating to 3.0 is not only about fibers, async, and so on, but there's also the replacement of Connect with Express. And this affects lots of packages that basically all were using the web app package, which is the wrapper package in Meteor for the Connect routes, which are now the Express routes, basically, or the middleware handlers for Express in this time. And there is also from Illustrate a post open regarding the simple REST compat packages. For those who don't know compat packages, there was a time when Tiny took over in Meteor. There were already this movement by Felipe to move some of the outdated packages that are still were very important and also not covered by the community packages into the Meteor core and do some compatibility layer of packages. And then they were working mostly fine, but lots of them are now, of course, outdated, require updates. And here is one thing, and that's they basically conflict with the way Express works now, because Express under the hood works different than Connect, of course. And Illustrate's offered a way to do a fork and maybe come up with a solution, but also wants to ask the community, what do we think about this, and what's our perspective, if this even makes sense. I personally have the favor to say, if most parts of the package are not to be used anymore beyond what Express already offers, I would encourage people to move to Express and do the stuff in Express. But this is only my view, and I think there might be others in the community that have a different view on that. So maybe Felipe, you want to jump in because you were creating these compat packages, and maybe you also want to add something here.
Yeah, the idea at this time was because we had some breaking chains and these packages were not maintained by anyone. Then I was always trying to reach for the community first, but in some cases there are some clients complain about that and the packages are not working anymore. So that's why we call compat, because you're not planning to add new features. You're just planning to keep them working. They work at least in a good way. So, but now you have this case where basically the core functionality of some of these packages are not required anymore. So, but at the same time, there are people that have code rely on this way to declare the routes. So it's a tough decision to choose a side. But I think we should do both. Like, you should encourage people to leave these packages, but at the same time, you should at least provide a way for them to keep running. Because if Ia goes back to the forum, you can see that I'm answering this because I see there are some ways to declare the routes that are going to work like straight if you use Express, but it's also not a lot of work to migrate these packages. So what I'm suggesting there is like maybe should emit a warning when they are using something not in the best possible way, but it should not break the package. So at least people can still run the code. And then maybe 1 year from now, we start, okay, this package is going to not be maintained anymore, so people can remove these warnings. But it's just a suggestion, as Ia said. There are many Ias here, but anyway, as one of the Ias said, you can reply in this thread because you want to hear from you. Like, I am not using this package, for example, in my apps, but maybe you are. So put your opinion there because that's going to be important to decide what to do.
And I have the same problem with Express, with Picker package that we maintain. And what was it? 2 weeks back, I did a deep dive, kind of a dive into Express in one of my special live stream on Friday, so 2 weeks back. And there is a lot of extra and additional functionality that Express provide, and so I would say it makes things easier, especially when it comes to routing. But then it's kind of a bit hassle trying to figure out how to do it properly with the existing package. So there is a chance for, at least with Picker, some transitional period where it's just going to call the Express API. And by the way, in Meteor 3, that Express API is hidden behind the web app package. So that's I would say also very crucial information to have. So anything else from you, Jan, on this topic?
Not from my end.
All right, guys. I think we should move on from the news now. We've got a couple of useful resources. We've been talking about conferences and calls for papers, but I think Storyteller has another useful resource that you could benefit from even today.
Yes. So this nice repository with a very witty logo hides with, of course, translations into many languages, which is nice. Has 33, besides also articles, but has like let's say it's called concepts in JavaScript that you should probably learn about, and it has starting from call stack, main function. Also has here specific, you could say to Meteor, which would be IIFE. And of course, you have async await, promises, all that stuff. I think most of you probably know these, but it's still a good idea to kind of go through it and see if there's something new, nice and new that you can pick up, and you have the reference most of the times, going from to the Mozilla developer MDN network. I always forget what's the last part, but pretty much it's the web doc. So there you can get kind of the basic information. And if you want tips and tricks, you have the articles, videos, and other resources to utilize. So definitely check that out.
I think it's a really good resource for just refreshing and catching up on things. If you are faced with a concept that you kind of know, but sometimes you know something and then you forget the details. It's not a bad thing to be able to go back, and I think it's a great set of resources where you could just kind of do a refresher. And of course, there are many of us that are new to some of these concepts. We've never employed them, or we're new to Meteor, or I'm sorry, JavaScript. and never really went very deep in it. And this is a way to get that knowledge that you might need so that you better understand some of the things we talk about on the newscast here also. And with that, I'd like to say one other way that you can further develop your your professional understanding of this wow, I was doing so well before, and now I'm hitting my spots again. So one way to further develop yourself professionally is by attending conferences. And we have decided that what we're going to do this year is also point out some of the conferences that you could be attending. And we've got a few of them that are still upcoming here. They haven't changed. The list hasn't changed from last week, but it's worth speaking about again for those of you that were not here last week. So in chronological order, we have NG India 2024 that's being held in Delhi, India. That's coming up on the 10th of February. DevOps.jS Conference 2024, which is an online conference, is being held on the 15th of February. And that's followed by JSWorld Conference 2024 in Amsterdam, Netherlands, which is going to be held on the 28th of February. On March 7th, we have Open Source Day 2024, which is going to be held in Florence, Italy. So that's a great place to go if you're looking for someplace that's really nice as a destination. Not to say that the rest aren't, but that's not so bad either. And then Frontrunners 2024 is being held in Washington, D.C., or it may be in the Arlington suburbs. It's not really clear from the write-up, and that's on March 8th. So does anybody else want to take on the CFPs, or should I continue with them?
I'll start with the first one because I will be attending this. This is Congress Next.js in Warsaw on February 2nd. The CFP closes on 28th January, so you can even go like really last minute with this one. Let me know if anybody is going to this. I'll be there courtesy of Gabriel Gruba, who gifted me a free ticket. He somehow obtained. So thanks very much, Gabriel. I'll be there and gonna spy on what everybody else is doing. And hopefully, maybe on February 1st, if there is people in Warsaw, hit me up and we can have a meetup or something like that. Next one, we have NodeTLV, which CSP closes 31st January. So if you want to go to Israel or from Israel, that's definitely...
Well, these are the call for paper close dates.
Yes.
That we're talking about here, yes.
The conference itself is on June 25th. So
yeah.
Then we have a smaller one in Seattle. The call for paper ends on the 4th of February. So that's another one coming up. And following that, on the 11th of February, we have Node Congress. So that's a big one. Where is that one? That one is online.
Yeah.
So everybody can join that. Always let us know if you submit, papers, or especially if you get accepted. So, we can storm.
Show up. Exactly.
Yes. Let me hopefully copy this link correctly. Right. And if not, that next one is JavaScript in France in Columbus, Ohio. The call for paper ends on 30th of February. And I'm probably copying the link wrong, but we have 3 more to go here. After that, 29th February is for the JS Conference in Ireland, in Dublin. That one will be hosted then in September, and at least according to these nice graphics, looks like a very nice environment. And staying in Europe, we have on March 3rd is the JS Nation, which is held in Amsterdam. But 3rd March is the close for call for papers. It's a big one. It even has Scott Dolinsky coming in, and maybe some other.
Wow. Okay.
Some other really nice, famous places. I'm seriously considering maybe trying to get into this one, but this one is where was it again? It's today, June 13th, June 17th, which sadly I will be probably at the other end of the world at that time. So not sure how that is going to turn out for me. And finally, in this session, also ending on 3rd of March, we have React Summit. And is that one also 2024 is in New York? Or wait,
there is another one. There is another one in New York, but this one is happening. It's just under the banner of JS Nation. It's a subcomponent to it, but it's certainly a different one that you can apply to. Now, one of the reasons that we're bringing this up is not just for. I mean, really, at the end of the day, if you present, you're going to find that people are going to get to know you. You're going to create a lot more opportunities for yourself. And it's a wonderful thing. I will tell you that many of these conferences tend to get these sort of A-list speakers, people that have been there before that can draw a crowd in. And they talk generally about specific things on Node. Now, there's a good chance that many of these will not have a topic or a discussion on Meteor. And that's where you can differentiate yourself and get into something where you might not be able to get in otherwise. And of course, from our perspective, the more paper submissions that we see going towards one of these conferences, the more likely it is that somebody will get accepted. So, one or two going in, people might say Meteor's dead. There's no reason for us to have this discussion. But 4 or 5 paper submissions going in, they might say, hold on a second, maybe something's going on here, and maybe we should have one of these guys show up. And so that creates a lot more opportunities. But again, this is like the lottery, right? You've got to be in it to win it. The more that you play, the better your chances are sometimes, assuming that this is not a fully randomized lottery. The more of a chance you're going to have of getting accepted to speak. So I encourage people to apply and let us know that you've applied, because maybe we can do something to create some social pressure to let those conferences know that we'd like to see somebody speaking about Meteor there, and we know that somebody submitted. So it'll be great if you're able to do this. We will continue throughout the year to find these dates, both for the conferences that you can attend as a consumer, or the CFPs where you could be a presenter, and share them with you for the next and future episodes that we do. So I think this is going to be a regular feature. You can count on it. And I think in future episodes, we'll put a QR code up for each of these so that you could just, point your camera and get the link to the CFPs and to the conferences themselves. So that's a convenience that we're going to make starting next week. And Jan, Küster, can you tell people what they should be doing if they like what they're seeing so far?
Oh, you mean regarding our channel and our videos? Of course, please subscribe, because if you're subscribing, you will always get information. You get notified about our next podcast, which is regularly on Fridays at the same time. But in case you might forget, or you're simply occupied by work or whatever there is, the YouTube bell will ring for you and let you know that the podcast is coming out, right? And also you're supporting us, which is also great for us. It shows that people like our content and want to see more, and it gives us motivation to keep on going, right?
Absolutely. And I've got to say, by the way, we appreciate everybody showing up, that the ones that are here, the ones that are in our chat with us, the ones that watch after the fact. Thank you so much for showing your support that way. I see Simon Agby is is in the chat right now. And I see that Küster is really great. I mean, he's able to like talk to people at the same time that that he's talking on the screen. I can't do that very well. And I'm also looking at the analytics, and I noticed that we've had up to 25 people in the chat with us this morning. So it's been growing. Thank you so much. I believe when I checked this morning, we had 148 subscribers. That's a big jump from where we started back in late August last year with just 20 subscribers to the channel. So we've grown, and that's you. And thank you for subscribing. And for those of you who are here for the first time, please do consider it. It'll help us out. All right. And let me switch over to any upcoming deep dive hot topics that might be out there. Storyteller, is there anything that we want to talk about?
Yes, we have with Jan this coming Thursday, if I remember correctly. It should be already on the channel. We'll be deep diving into Meteor 3, specifically at the most, let's say, about the most painful topic, or one that's going to be, I would say, biggest issue for most people, and that is about packages.
Okay.
So
this is the second of the multi-part deep dive into Meteor 3.0, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool. And do we have any news? I'm going to put you on the spot right now. Do we have any news as to the Blaze panel that we've been planning for a while?
Not yet. We are still trying to figure out some scheduling issues, or if we are going to ditch one of our panelists.
Okay. All right. Very good. All right. And so now we've gotten to the point where we have a segment which we've not really taken advantage of yet, called Understanding Meteor. And there's a reason that we have this pretty face of our former CEO of Meteor here with us, Felipe Navala. Felipe is here because he's going to help us understand what makes Node.js and actually a Meteor application. And so I'm going to turn the floor over right now to Felipe. I think he's got some things to share, and he's going to help us deepen our understanding as to why Meteor is not just a sideshow, but it's an enabling tool for any Node developer that can use. So Felipe, let me pass it on to you now.
Yes.
Oh,
so
sorry about that,
I
Felipe.
think you can see my screen, right?
Yep.
Okay, so Alim asked my help to explain like why Meteor is Node.js, or if I agree with that or not. And he proposed a few questions that I'm going to try to answer here. And feel free to throw some questions in the chat as well, because I don't think this is very clear for everybody that is using Meteor. So let me just drag this, because I think there is some stuff in the bottom of the screen. So let's first start a little bit with this diagram. I was saying to Alim that I think you don't need a diagram, but in the end I created one. But and don't take this as like a very precise description what Meteor is. It's more a way for me to show you that you have some stuff that when you're running Meteor in your development environment, and when you are building a Meteor application using Meteor build, and if you are using Meteor deploy because you're deploying to Galaxy, it's exactly the same, because Meteor deploy is just going to do the build first and then send it to Galaxy the bundle. So it's exactly the same result in terms of code. And I'm going to show you how Galaxy run your code as well. So in the end, what you have in development, like your code, you have your packages, you have dev tools that are really important, because otherwise your code's not going to be so easy to update while you are developing. So Meteor start a proxy for you. Meteor start, probably are using some kind of hot module replacement. You maybe are starting also MongoDB. So Meteor run a lot of tools for you to make easier to develop with Meteor. And also have some code from the core. We also have some code from core packages. So I have a lot of things that you see Meteor everywhere. And they seem to be very far from Node.js. But if you're really familiar with Meteor, you know that behind the scenes, everything is Node.js in the server, and everything is just the browser in the client. So in the server, You also can have like package.json as you have for any Node.js application. You can install external dependencies and so on. And just to plug a little bit here about Meteor 3 and why Meteor 3 is so great is because still in Meteor 2, you have something that I didn't put here, but maybe I should. That have something called fibers. And then if you're a very experienced Node.js developer, you maybe never heard about fibers. So that's no longer the case with Meteor 3. So I'm not going to talk too much about fibers, but just remember, even if people are saying fibers as a weird thing, it is still a Node.js. Like it's not something that Meteor created. It's Node.js in the same way, but it's not the way that people decide to use Node.js in the long term for the community as a whole, but it's not something that Meteor come up with. So, but I'm going to remove fibers from the picture so we don't get confused because that's not the case anymore. Let's assume that 2024 is Meteor 3. So with this in mind, now you can try to understand what happens after the build. So forget about dev tools, of course. You don't need to have dev tools after you build your project. You just need to run. So when you want to run your project, you have like basically a few components here. So now we can consider this a Node.js application, but that again, that's just to try to show you the difference. But this is already a Node.js application, okay? But let's suppose that from this point forward, we don't have Meteor anymore. So maybe you're wondering like, okay, if Meteor is nothing, why am I using Meteor? No, Meteor is not nothing, but Meteor is not a runtime. So Meteor is a bunch of packages that help you to develop Node.js applications with JavaScript in the client side as well. But these packages, they are just Node.js code or Node.js compatible code, or maybe in the future also you can run with Bun. But anyway, so what is going to be produced there? So I have a main file that is going to connect two things. It's going to connect the first one that is called runtime. And this part is probably the most tricky one. And I'm going to show you the code. So it's not just going to be these bullets. But you're going to see that the code's a little bit complex. Why? Because Meteor uses something that's called Rayfi. But Rayfi is also not Meteor. Rayfi is just a package that you can use in any Node.js application to transpile your code or to like link your code. Maybe it's a better way because you're going to see a bunch of links in the code that I'm going to show you very soon. So when you have like a code like this, can you see? This is just Node. There is no reference to Meteor in this page. So you can use import like that. Because when Meteor started, that was a challenge. Right now, we have a bunch of tools that supports this kind of import statement, but that was very hard in the beginning. So Meteor uses this way to connect your different modules. But again, it's not Meteor. It's just Node.js you can use anyway, even in the console like this. And Meteor has a fork, but doesn't matter about this. It's just because we want to keep updating it more easily. And then this runtime, I'm going to show you in a moment, is like this Rayfi stuff, trying to link all the modules. So I have a bunch of modules in your code, and Rayfi is trying to find all of them, connect all of them. So that's one part. The second part is your application, but composed with code from Meteor core. This is not a package. This is Meteor core. Meteor has this file, and it copies it over to your application, the same file. And then this file is trying to find your package with a main entry point. And I'm going to show you as well. So it starts to load all the packages, trying to find, okay, this is where I start my code. That's called main function. And then that function is going to be triggered. And then probably this function is going to be invoking something from your code. For example, a startup block or something like this. If you're used to Meteor, you know what I'm talking about when I say a startup function. And then your code is also going to be bundled in a file like AppJS. But let's try to see this in practice, but to not be so complex, I'm going to use a very, very simple code. This is basically just a Meteor empty project that we call Meteor template. Is the way that my company starts all the project, but it's just a very simple code. And then what I'm going to show you, like you have this code here. Let me expand a little bit. So you have this code running here, and yeah, I'm running a job here, but that's not important. But I have a bunch of logs here. I just put some logs here so you can try to understand, like when you see the code, maybe you think, oh, that's my first file because I have this file in my main module. But actually, Meteor is going to call a bunch of other parts first. So you can see the runtime, you can see package, you can see Rayfi in the mix. But in the end, it's going to call your code. That's the important part. But that's development, right? So what I did, I just run Meteor build. Let me see, it's probably here. Here. So I just run Meteor build, okay? And now I have a second window with this build result. So then get back to my diagram. So what is this main here? Is the main my diagram? And you're going to see this is important because this is where everything starts. Why this is important? Because this one is the one that is going to start the runtime in the boot. And now you can imagine like, okay, but how can I run my application in production? Should I install Meteor in production? No, you don't need to install Meteor because Meteor is not a runtime. So let's see how Galax does. So Galax uses the main file. Which main file is this? Is this main file. So this main file is how Galax runs. And maybe you're going to think, oh, but that's just because Galax built for Meteor. No, doesn't matter. For example, zCloud, that is a topic that also Alim asked me to talk about, is also running in the same way. We just run the main file. And again, no, you don't have any Meteor mentioned in this file because it's just an Node.js application. And to prove that, you also have here, I put MountAPM. I think most of people know MountAPM from Southern. If you don't know, you should check it out because MountAPM is also being updated to Meteor 3, and it's going to include a lot of cool stuff, but I'm not going to talk about that. But anyway, you have some statistics here that you can see in the system tab. And if you look closely to these statistics, they are not Meteor statistics, most of them. They are just Node.js statistics. So if you know what is event loop from Node, you know what is event loop from Meteor. Why? Because there is no Meteor event loop. The event loop is just for Node. And you can see all the other things. And as I said, the same for Fibers. Fiber was not created inside Meteor. Fiber is just something that you can use in any Node.js project until Node 14 without any problems. So that's a way that you can show to anyone that this is just Node.js. And then I was talking with Ali briefly before this call that if you learn Meteor and if you know how to use Meteor really well, you also know how to use Node really well. But what is the benefit? Why it's so good to use Meteor? Because going back to our diagram, we can also take advantage of these nice packages. And with these nice packages, as Ian mentioned in the previous topic, if you're building a real-time application, I don't know any solution even close to Meteor in the benefits that it can bring it to you in a matter of seconds. So you just add a package and you have like real-time data coming from MongoDB in a magic way. For most people, they don't believe like how this could be that fast and that easy to do. So that's why I use Meteor, not because you don't want to learn Node, because you learn Node using Meteor and you need to learn Node, but because Meteor provides you a lot of code for your Node application that are very easy to connect. But let's just wrap up this. So runtime, as I told you, it's a little bit hard to read this code, but it's basically using Ray5 modules to bring all your modules together. And then you have the boot part that is looking for, okay, I have any package with a main, declare. If I have, I'm going to start to run by this main. So that's the way that Meteor runs your code. If you don't put any package that has a main, Meteor is going to throw an error, say, okay, I don't have a way to start your code. So it's not a magic way to start a Meteor project. It's just trying to find a way for a code with a main. What is the default one that you can replace if you want? The default one is coming from the web server, the web app package. Now I'm in the Meteor code, okay? I leave the build, and now I'm in the Meteor code just to explain how this magic happened in your project. You have the web app, and if you go to your web app, for sure, you are going to find this main. So if you clone this package and you remove this main, your Meteor app is going to stop to start. Why? Because this is the main that's going to generate the boilerplate, you know, the HTML, the basic HTML that is injected to your request. And also, it's the one that is going to start to listening to your HTTP WebSocket, HTTP port, and also to start the WebSocket. So I think for a lot of people, it's very hard to understand Meteor because you don't need to write this code. Because usually in Node, you need to write this code, right? I think if you have create any project with Node, you say, okay, it's not exactly the same, but I understand it because I just start to listen to a specific port, and Meteor does that for you. So maybe for you, it's kind of, oh, it's magic, but again, it's not magic. And then it's also start the WebSocket, as you can see here, and then Meteor is ready to accept your requests. So there is no magic. There is nothing that's Meteor specific. There is just a bunch of benefits for you to be very easy to start a Meteor project. And after all this, you finally get your code. So just so you can see like from to comparison here, like let me open these two files here. So what you see in the right side is the compiled version, like the build version, and what you see in the left side is your source code. So you're going to say, oh, Felipe, the left is much easier. Yes, because Meteor is doing this build process. It's using Ray-Fi, but basically you can, for example, every import is going to become a Meteor link, a module link, sorry. What is the module? Is module something from Meteor? No, module is something from Node.js. It's Node.js module system running in production. So each link is one import, each link is one import. You can see there is a perfect match between my left side and my right side. I don't know if it's hard to follow, but I think it's clear enough. And then you have some stuff here, crazy stuff from Ray-Fi that you don't need to. And by the way, this is using Meteor 3. So maybe if you do the same test with Meteor 2, you're going to see a little bit different stuff because you're going to have fibers around, but this is Meteor 3. And then you have the settings, and then you have the startup call. In this case, is an empty block. And I, just to be clear, I did like this. I just put these logs later. So the logs are not there because it was like this when I compile. So can you understand that they are correlated? Like they are the same code, but with a lot of Ray-Fi into the mix. And if you are not using Ray-Fi, you need to use some tools to create this link. So it's going to be basically the same. Maybe in the future, Meteor is going to replace Ray-Fi. I'm not sure. But you have dynamic imports in a very nice way with Ray-Fi, but that's not the topic for this discussion. And that's basically it. So everything that you wrote is going to be in this Ray-Fi style, but it's the same code. Like if you start to look to all the files here, you're going to say, oh, that's my code. Oh, that's my code. Oh, that's my return. That's my collection. And everything is going to be here in exactly the same way. And if you still don't believe me that MeteorJS is just Node.js, in this project, I also have like a metrics one that I can use I don't know if you're familiar with this observability stack with Grafana, Prometheus, and other stuff. You can just connect this to your application. So I have this custom method here that's just providing access to Prometheus. So Prometheus is going to be able, with this prompt client that is just Node.js stuff, is going to be able to collect these metrics. And if you connect a Grafana dashboard to these metrics, you are going to see something very similar to this one that you have also inside MonteAPM without any Meteor-specific stuff. MonteAPM does that, so maybe you think, oh, that's different in Meteor. No, that's basically the same. You can use any tool that you have from the Node.js open source tools. So that's why, now that Alim asked me to explain about zCloud, that's why zCloud is not built for Meteor, but also it's running Meteor. Why? Because Meteor is just Node.js. So basically, zCloud is just another provider that you can connect your Docker file, or you can just use a preset for Meteor. You have a bunch of presets for a bunch of technology, as you can see here. And then you can run your database with us. You can run MongoDB with us. You can run a bunch of stuff using GitHub Actions, using GitHub Push to Deploy. And that's basically it. And then it's going to run your Meteor application. And Alim also asked me who is running with zCloud. We have a bunch of Meteor companies because of our past, but we also have companies running PHP. We also have companies running Python. And sometimes, like some Meteor applications, they like to run with us because they can run Meteor, they can run Node, they can run Python, they can run MongoDB, Postgres, MySQL, all the database in the same cluster. So, but why? How you can run that? Like, again, Node and also Node. Like, you don't need to have anything specific for Meteor. And we have a partnership with MonteAPM. So we have a discount if you use zCloud because they are the best one for Meteor. But this part here, we also have inside Grafana. So you don't need to have the Meteor side because this is just like regular Node.js stuff. I hope I could be clear enough and concise enough, but I think I'm trying to prove that like Meteor is Node.js in runtime. So there is nothing else going on here. And I think you can see it yourself. Just go to your project, run Meteor build, find these files, watch this video again to try to understand each part. Because I think this is important for you, especially if your team is growing, because you can hire new Node.js developers and you can explain to them like this. Like you can just do the same explanation on your code and show, can you see? This is just Node.js. And maybe they're going to say, oh, but I don't know what is a publication. Okay, but if you need to install any pub system to your Node.js application, we also need to learn this pub system. So Meteor is just a pub system, or Meteor is just a method call, like a RPC, right? A remote procedure call. So we have frameworks to do that. And Meteor is one of these frameworks. But Meteor is not something that's very weird or very different to learn. And I hope without fibers, it's much easier for us to explain this to people when they ask why you're using Meteor and how I can learn more about Meteor.
So I think the takeaway that people should get from this, especially if you're looking to adopt a JavaScript technology or new to this, is that learning Meteor is not a bad thing. It's not something that is not fungible that you can't take with you, because Meteor is a way to bootstrap your learning into Node. If you're an experienced Node developer, learning Meteor just makes you far more efficient with Node. And having that Node experience and having that Node knowledge allows you to debug your Meteor applications with a lot more sophistication than if you were just on Meteor itself. Meteor, for those that are starting out, Meteor gets you up and running. It gets you from 0 to 60 very fast. But then you need to do the work to learn how Node works. And in doing that, you make yourself more valuable and you have a broader shelf life, so to speak, in terms of your own skills that you can use. But it also helps you in terms of being able to understand deeply what is going on behind the scenes with your application when you are building it with Meteor. So, you don't stop with Meteor when you learn Meteor, right? You spend a little more time, and the way to move forward is you get deeper and deeper into understanding how Node works. So again, it can get you very productive early in the journey, but if you want to become a real professional, you will spend your time learning Node, and now you have a broad set of skills that you can use beyond just the Meteor community. And of course, if you're a Node developer and you're used to working in large teams and you want to really get your hands on like the broader part of an application, or have work on the bigger picture, the full product, right? You can do that with Meteor, because Meteor obviates things like the database. It obviates things like the build system. You don't have to be a DevOps expert in order to do that. You can get in, you can build an application, you can be productive much, much more quickly than if you were to try to build everything from scratch in Node.js. So this is part of the story I think we're trying to explain to people so they understand it. Part of the story behind Meteor is not dead, right? Because what it is it's a productivity tool. It's a lever. It makes you much more productive. It makes you much more, capable by yourself or in smaller teams than if you had to do this on your own. You'd need a lot more time and a lot more expertise from other people in different domains. So unless I've said something that is incorrect, I think everybody here agrees to this. Is there anything else you guys might want to add to this conversation before we start going towards wrap up?
I think you kind of said it nicely. Meteor is, I would say, a speed up tool. It's, for example, after years of building websites, not that usually people tend to build like their own starters. Meteor is one of those could say more advanced starters that kind of gets, if you just build with Node.js and you're constantly building up, real-time applications. So instead of constantly setting up, the basic setup and the WebSockets, all that stuff, Meteor gives that to you for free, plus a lot of other option. I think one of the biggest thing that it gives you for free is the account system, which also inspired, again, going to Meteor is not dead, Meteor is dead, inspired other account systems around the JS ecosystem. So there's a lot of these other tools, and the benefit, as Felipe, as you mentioned, with the packages, is that for the most part they work very nice together with the Meteor, so you don't have to do a lot of your wiring on yourself, especially back in the days when we only had Blaze. You just install it, for example, the user account package, and you got even all the entire front end for the user accounts with all the stuff. So there's a lot of little benefits like that really can speed you forward into development, especially now with the big companies shedding employees. And the same thing for startups. you want to focus on your core product. You don't want to play around with technology and with all the little things. You want to focus on what makes you money. And I think Meteor makes that really easier because you don't have to worry for the most part with all the technical externalities. You can just focus on your core business.
And because you said about packages, I didn't even mention packages because that's not quite important in production. Package is just a way for you to have some, I would say, like some hooks in Meteor that you're not capable of doing with Node.js packages. So it's a little bit more powerful, in my opinion, than NPM packages, because you can run code without the user needs to write a code to call this, and in Node.js that's not possible. But maybe in the future, Meteor packages are going to be deprecated and you're going to have just Node.js packages. But you don't need to be afraid of Meteor packages. Like, they're really, really simple, and they provide you some nice tools to run the code without coding explicitly a call for this code. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's like a code with plug and play for real. Like, without any line of code, you can run a code inside your system. Maybe that's a concern for you because you can run any code, but of course you need to be aware of the package that you are including, and you see the code of the package. So, but that's very powerful. That's why you said, like, in the past was very easy, like you add a package and you have even the UI for your authentication ready without a single line of code from yourself. So that's truly unique to the package system of Meteor.
That was the power behind projects like Telescope and Vulkan. If you've ever played with those, it's like Legos. You just say, I want to use the package for forums. And all of a sudden you have an entire forums application in your app. And you just have to maybe configure the colors, maybe configure the font, but you would have that available to you just by including that project. If you wanted to have chat, you could have that in there also. And all you have to do is include the project, include the package. And that is an incredibly powerful thing because it's like assembling things with like Legos, And it's funny that Sasha spent a lot of time building this really sophisticated set of platforms, and people did use it, and they used it for free. It's a little sad that we haven't seen more of that in the Meteor community, because it is tremendously powerful, that it allows you to assemble things very, very quickly without having to do a lot of development.
Alim, if you allow me, let me just recap what we discussed, I think 3 years ago in person in New York, when I was still the Meteor CEO, and you asked me, Felipe, why are you not reaching for corporations, like for big companies to promote Meteor? And I told you at that time, like, we have a problem because I have fibers. And at that time, you had just discovered, or not discovered because it was a problem that was introduced by a V8 change, that fiber was no longer to be compatible with Meteor. Then we start to like, okay, what is the point of our company reaching to big companies that they are going to see like, okay, this software is not compatible. So of course I'm not going to adopt. And why I mentioned this right now, because I think right now we are really, really close to have Meteor 3 without any major blocker. Maybe you don't like Ray-Fi, maybe you don't like the build speed, maybe you don't like this or that, but that's going to happen in any framework that you choose. Sure. But right now, you don't have any strong reason for a security team somewhere say like, oh, it's not allowed to use this because you are running with Node.js in an old version. So right. I think now is, of course, everybody here knows that I'm no longer working for Tiny, but now I think it's a very good space for Tiny, and Fred, of course, is thinking about that and is probably already acting on that to be able to go forward with Meteor for companies again. Because again, if you were in my spot like 3 years ago, that makes no sense. Like if you know you're going to get a no, why you're going to start? Because we had a blocker. But this blocker is almost gone. It's not gone yet, but it's almost gone. And then that's why I said in the beginning that maybe it's the third life of Meteor, because you can say, okay, you can use it. We don't have any blockers. We don't have any major concerns. So that's very good news for the community. So I think you should be excited about Meteor 3. I know everybody's a little bit sad because you need to migrate, but you should be excited. If you like Meteor, it's the best chance that you have to have Meteor 4, Meteor 5, Meteor 6. And now we are in a very good spot to have new adoption.
So I made a promise at the beginning of this program that if you listen to the end, we'll kind of recap a lot of the conversations that were going on here and talk about, maybe those 5 items or arguments that you can use with your team going forward as to why they should pick up on Meteor. I think Felipe has pointed out one of those, which is we no longer have any blocking issues or real blocking issues in terms of adoption and future compatibility with the rest of the Node ecosystem when we go towards using Meteor 3.0. The other things are a lot more, general or marketing oriented in the sense that we've talked about some of these too. One is, Meteor allows you to move faster and be very super productive because you could focus on just solving the problem that you're trying to deal with rather than figuring out what's going to be my build system, what's going to be my middleware, what is going to be my database. All of those things are given to you at the beginning. You don't have to think about that. That removes a lot of mental overload. Number one. That's number 2, I'm sorry. You can evaluate MVCs much quicker and get to market much faster with Meteor than if you had to assemble all of these things. Again, time to market, the ability to execute quickly, that is also another one of those reasons that you might want to pick up on Meteor. And you get all the benefits of Node.js because Meteor just helps you build Node applications faster. So that is one of the things that you can also make an argument on because you can use pretty much every single NPM package out there. So everything that's available for Node is available for Meteor, and Meteor has its own package system, which gives you even more capabilities on steroids. And so that's the 4th item that we have here. And of course, you get real-time capabilities from the platform right out of the box. You don't have to build that yourself. It's already done for you. And I'll give you a 6th item as a bonus, which is Meteor is known for its accounts package. It is robust. It has been proven secure. Something that is very difficult to build on your own. You get it for free out of the box with Meteor. And with that, unless you guys have something else to add to that, any bonuses that you want to throw in here, we should probably just remind people that, you should like and share this episode with others if you think you're getting value out of it. And there's something else that I also want to point out, which is we have developers here that are doing a lot of work on the core and on the packages, and not just these developers, but if you find that you're getting value from open source, you really should consider sponsoring your developers. And we have Jan Küster and Jan Dvorak here who do a lot of work. I would encourage you to reach out to them, and they've got sponsorship pages on GitHub. Buy them a cup of coffee, keep them going. Those are things. Showing some appreciation is one way to keep people deeply involved in building software that you benefit from. And with that, I am at my end. I'm going to turn it over to Küster for a second and see if he's got anything to add and see if he wants to turn anything over to Storyteller. But, that's what I got.
I think I don't have anything to add to to Felipe's presentation. That was quite complete. And your addition regarding the time to market and the market value was also quite complete. What I also want to say, and that was also a comment in the chat from Dimitri, and that is MeteorJS is pure joy for devs. And I think this is something really important here. I just want to point out again that the joy of development, on the one hand, this is all work, but on the other hand, this is also something we should enjoy. At least I picked this profession because I really enjoy it. And that's the biggest point for me to stick with Meteor, because it's really a joy to work with it. That's what I wanted to say.
I'd like to just throw in on Dimitri. So Dimitri is also known in the community as Dr. Dimitru. And, he revealed something to me last year, which I thought was, or it might have been a year more ago, 2 years ago, is that, when he brings on new Node developers, he's able to onboard them within a couple of days and get them productive with Meteor very, very quickly, which is not something that is typical when you have to use a larger set of different tools when in building out your application. When you're using multiple different frameworks and so on, you've got to assemble things. The ramp-up time tends to be a lot longer. And Dr. Dumitru has been able to benefit from Meteor in terms of getting people on board and productive and lowering his acquisition cost in terms of talent by using Meteor. So, glad you brought up Dumitru there. And Storyteller, you got any last items that you want to add?
Not really. Maybe actually to answer here from Simon asking for some project ideas. I think we'll keep that for a special episode to talk about the different things that you can build with Meteor relatively easily. So stay tuned. We'll definitely put this on our list of episodes to work on.
All right, so, Simon, for now, you might want to take that question into the community Slack and see if anybody has anything to add there, or, put it in the forums and see what kind of responses you might get back in the meantime. But yeah, I think there'll be some benefit for doing some episodes where we can either suggest some projects or actually live code on some projects. And with that, I would like to say thank you, Felipe, for joining us this week. We really appreciate you being here and being, part of our gang today and joining in on the news. And hopefully, we're going to talk and see if we can bring you back either next week or the week after to discuss the ESLint plugin that can be very helpful for these migrations and show people how to use it. All right?
Sure. Thank you for the space.
Okay. All right. And with that, I'm going to say, have a great weekend, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.